Little double dip action in the DraftKings world. Welcome into the slate. I had you on the sweat this morning, Adam Kaufman, with some other baseball analysts. Now for this show, we're going to get the, look, no disrespect to the earlier guys. I love them, but this right here is these guys' show. This is the cream of the crop baseball program.
Exactly.
Matt LaMarcus, Steve Buchanan, a couple of good fellas in their own right. How are you?
What was the average overall age of the guys in the beginning of the show on the sweat this morning?
I'll tell you everyone we had Jeff and Pierce, not on baseball, but then the baseball guy, and we also had Colin, who was not on baseball.
I don't care about them.
Okay, the baseball guys purely were your guy Paul Bruno, Matt Meiselman, Gary and Thorne, and Eric Halterman. That was your fearsome. That was your fantastic four.
I don't know if I'd use fantastic, but okay, that was the four of them.
Yeah, I don't know what the average age is. I mean, obviously, you put Gary on one end of the spectrum, you put Paul on the other one, and you just kind of float in the middle probably with the other two.
All right, let's roll. Let's see what we got.
All right, well, I think, guys, this is pretty much going to be a Julio Rodriguez appreciation show. We will talk about what's going on tonight, maybe look ahead to some MVP odds in both leagues and all that good stuff. But this contract that was announced earlier today that I don't believe has been officially signed, but it will be. It was announced earlier today, and near and dear, I'm sure, to Steve's heart, being the boisterous Seattle Mariners fan that he is. This is, for anyone that is watching or listening that has not heard about this deal yet, this is unprecedented across North American professional sports.
I feel like I need a PhD to understand it.
It's awesome.
It's pretty insane. I'm not going to break down all the intricacies of it, but sort of the headline is, it's an 8-year, $120 million contract. He's a rookie, by the way. He's 21 years old. It's 8 for 120, beginning immediately and running through 2029, okay? Now, there's a club option after 2028 for another 8 or 10 years. It's a club option, not for 1 year, for another 8 or 10 years worth between $200 and $350 million. If he were to refuse, or if the team doesn't want it, he can still elect to pick up a 5-year, $90 million contract. So that's like a worst case scenario. If he sucks for the next decade, he can still cash in another 5 for 90, or elect to become a free agent just before turning 30. But let's just say that the Mariners do pick up one of those either 8 or 10-year options on that deal, then this contract could be worth up to 18 years. 18 years, $470 million through the year 2039. Bukes, my God, what were you thinking when you read this thing?
Well, first of all, it's an amazing contract. And I honestly think you left out the best part.
Please.
And that the salary can go up over the years if he's in the top 10 in the MVP voting. So that is like one of the best incentives to keep, playing hard every single year. You see some of these dopes who gets like these $500 million contracts and then they just mail it in after that because they're paid. Who cares anymore? But now, what are you making a face for?
You really think that happens?
Yeah.
You really think players are like, oh, not going to try anymore?
No, but
there's no competitor in them.
The fire and the flame in them to be competitive, it does a little bit.
I don't think that's true of a guy who's in his early to mid or even late 20s, just entering his prime. But if you got a guy who's got like 5 years left on his deal, making a ton of money, and he's like 33, I don't totally disagree with Bukes.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying like today, like they sign it and then like, well, I'm done. I'm saying, down the road, it's a good incentive to keep him going. Not that he needs it anyways, because he's the best outfielder we have. Forget about that Kelnick guy. That guy stinks, right? He's a AAA darling. That's where we're at. The Mets won that trade. I'm officially on it. The Mets won that trade. That's where I'm at. But I love the contract, and it just kind of go. And we've seen a lot of this now, right? Teams locking up their core players early. Austin Riley got it earlier this month. Julio Rodriguez gets it this month.
Well, your guy Tatis last year.
Well. Yeah, I don't know how great that looks right now. Let me tell you that. There might be a little,
but for him, it looks pretty good at the moment.
Oh yeah. But maybe a little buyer's remorse there at this point. Guy can't even get on the fields. His fault and not his fault.
Yeah, literally can't get on the field. Not allowed.
Right. Wander Franco, I think, was also signed
Yep.
to a big contract too. So a lot of huge names and teams wrapping him up. And then, the Red Sox can't even do it with Rafi Devers. But here nor there. Love this contract. Love the structure of it. And the Mariners are set now for the next, by the time this contract's up, I'm going to be in my 50s.
Yeah, again, LaMarca, if this thing and Bukes obviously broke some of the aspects down, in more detail than I did, but if we're just bottom lining this thing, best case scenario for Rodriguez, this is worth 18 years, $470 million. Now it's easy to look at that and say, Juan Soto turned down 440 from the Nats and it wasn't even close to 18 years. It was like, 13 or 14, something like that. So he's, in the long run, it's possible he's costing himself a little bit of money. Still, I would have no regrets if I'm him. You're 21 years old and you signed initially for like $1 million or $2 million. Now you've got a $500 million potentially coming your way. So like, you're good. Obviously he's feeling really good about this contract, I would think. But I mean, what do you make of a deal like this? Is something like this? Well, two things. What do you think of it for the Mariners? And what do you think of it in terms of where we could be heading? Like, could this be the new norm?
I think it's insanely smart on Julio Rodriguez's part. I mean, he's getting the safety of an upfront contract, and he is giving himself some built-in upside on the back end, right? Like, if he does qualify for this, the highest level team option, he's still going to be making $35 million a year. And maybe 10 years from now, we'll be looking back and saying, you know what? That's way too cheap. Mike Trout Jr. is making $75 million right now.
For 1 year.
Right. And maybe it will be, but like, at least he didn't go the full route that we've seen, like some of the Braves guys do, for example.
Yeah.
Where if they reach their full potential, they're going to be vastly, vastly underpaid. So I like it for Rodriguez. I do think that it is an insane amount of risk for the Mariners. I get it. Julio Rodriguez is fantastic. He's 21 years old. So many things can go wrong in this point, and they're on the hook for the next 16 years. It's crazy to me that you would want to have a player locked up for that long of a time. Look at Mike Trout, right? If the Angels had signed Mike Trout to this kind of deal, we would have lauded them, right? Mike Trout turned into one of the greatest baseball players we've ever seen, but he is now, still technically in the prime of his career, and he's dealing with chronic back issues. Like, stuff like this happens. And I think for a team like Seattle, that isn't necessarily like a huge market, it's a lot of risk. You're basically tying your future to this kid, and hoping that it goes well. And I mean, I'm not rooting against it. I hope that it does work out and that both sides make out really well in this deal. But it just feels like I don't know why they needed to do this right now, right? Like, they couldn't have explored a Braves option where it's more, we're just going to buy out your arbitration years and your first couple of years of free agency. Like, they had to say, no, you're going to play in Seattle until you're 40. And the kid is 21 years old. So
let me float this at you though, because I think it's so you look at what he's done so far. All-star, put on a show in the home run derby. He's not hitting great in terms of like your basic old school stats, right? He's hitting 270. The OBP is 330. The slugging percentage is 470, but he has 20 homers, 23 stolen bases. He's a 21-year-old rookie who started incredibly slow. He's been much better since, struck out like 30 of his first 70 at bats or something like that. He's going to be very, very good. But he's really, by Seattle standards, certainly, if not some other teams, he's sort of the best thing we've seen out that way since Griffey, right? And so if you were to imagine like Griffey signed a contract like that when he was 19, 20, when he came up, that had locked him in for essentially 2 decades, which he basically played anyway with his various stops before winding back in Seattle. If he had the kind of start that Griffey had, but finished the way Griffey did, which was injury prone and declining stats and all of that stuff, would you still look at it $470 million later and say, worth it?
I would argue that Griffey is the perfect example of why you don't do a deal like this, right? Like, the Mariners lost Griffey And it was obviously a huge deal for the franchise. But the reality is that they got all the best baseball out of Ken Griffey Jr. and then let somebody else overpay it.
Yep. I will say this too, and I think this has more to do with the timing. Over the next 1 or 2 years, specifically the outfield market is going to explode because you have Aaron Judge up for a contract.
Mm-hmm.
You have Juan Soto up for a contract. 2 unbelievably massive deals are to come down the pipeline. And let's just say that Juan Soto ends up being everything that the Mariners envision him to be. Steals, hits for power, whatnot. And then the bar is set at Judge, Soto, and Julio Rodriguez is playing to that potential. Then what? So in a way, for as stupid as these contracts are, because it's like, oh, maybe they saved some money. Maybe they actually did save themselves some money in the long run because of the deal that Judge is about to get, because of the deal that Juan Soto is going to bet. And I'll throw out another huge contract that's coming in Trey Turner. Trey Turner is also going to get a huge deal when that comes up too. So there are a lot of huge contracts coming down the line in the next year or so. And I think the Mariners are trying to get ahead of that a little bit here and almost kind of set some sort of market for some of these other guys, because now these guys have to go above Julio Rodriguez, in my opinion. So I think that has something to do with it too as well.
What's funny?
It's definitely a fair deal, I think, when you look at it on a per year basis and you project some growth into what for Julio Rodriguez. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that we're going to, if he becomes an MVP caliber player, he's going to be underpaid when this is all said and done. So I get it. I get why Seattle did it. It just feels like they could have, like, I think the way that the Braves have done it has been extremely smart, right? Mm-hmm. They have a whole host of young players that they have locked up basically through their 20s, right? And then once they hit their 30s, then they're going to reevaluate on some of these guys. I think that's the smartest way to do it. If you're trying to be frugal and if you're trying to get steals, right? Because again, who cares what you're paying Julio Rodriguez when he's 35 years old? He could be donezo by that point, right? Let somebody else pay the Albert Pujols contract. Let somebody else pay the Robinson Cano contract. That's the best part about baseball. If you're smart and you lock up these players through their prime, you don't have to necessarily worry about that second deal. You can let somebody else overpay for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of in the grand scheme of things, it's really interesting. Like, I remember we were doing this show last year, whenever it was, when Tatis got the deal, and Bukes and I got into the fight that we did about how, he thought it was a great deal. I thought it was actually a mistake on the part of Tatis. Now, it's easy to look at things a little bit differently right now, but at that point in time, I thought, hey, like, you're costing yourself money. You're only signing for 330, 350, whatever it was, versus what you could theoretically earn along the way. And it's, you could look at this deal, like, this is a nice number, obviously up to 470. It's a real nice number, but we've now seen multiple, however many $300+ million deals. And then we're starting to get into the 400s, and we're probably only half dozen, not even years away from starting to see those $500 million deals. So the way this deal may look a decade from now, when Julio Rodriguez is 31 years old, it is possible he's going to look underpaid, which is just nuts as we sit here in 2022.
That's baseball, Susan. Yeah.
Fair. All right. Well, let me ask you this then, before we start to look ahead to tonight. I don't want to go one by one, but if there are any guys of this group that you do want to single out, and Bukes, we'll start with you. You mentioned Trey Turner. You mentioned, obviously, Juan Soto. There's Aaron Judge. You mentioned him. Rafael Devers as well. Shohei Ohtani is another big one. What kind of deals should we start to expect for guys like that after seeing something like this?
Yeah, you're getting to the $500 million range now. That's the worst part about all this is now you're creeping into the $500 million range. If you're going to give Julio Rodriguez just under $500 million, what do you give Shohei Ohtani?
Obviously the ages are different. You're not going to give Aaron Judge a 15-year deal, because he's already in his 30s. But I think Shohei Ohtani is going to set the record for most average annual value. He could approach $50 million annually, and he probably deserves to when you factor in his value as a pitcher and as a hitter. I think the Judge contract is going to be really interesting, right? Because he has had a phenomenal season. But again, he's old for baseball standards these days. And we have kind of gotten to the point where most general managers do not want to pay a player into his late 30s. So, we saw it with Freddie Freeman, right? Freddie Freeman was the NL MVP, considered one of the best pure hitters in the game. And he struggled to find a deal that was adequate for him, right?
Right.
He ended up settling for, a 6-year deal, I believe, with the Dodgers, maybe even a 5-year deal. So it would not shock me if, despite Aaron Judge having this crazy season, he's going to win the MVP award, he really might not have raised his total value all that much. I still think he's going to get a 5, 6, 7-year deal. He might make more on an AAV basis, like the amount per year probably increased. But if Aaron Judge wants the 10-year deal that like Albert Pujols got, I just don't see any team willing to make that happen. Now, if there is a team that's going to do it, it's the Yankees, because the Bronx will riot if they lose Aaron Judge.
Losing the guy.
They will literally riot, because for years it has been, we can't sign free agent because we need to save money for Aaron Judge's contract. And if after all of that, they lose Aaron Judge, I fear for what they may do to Yankee Stadium. They may burn it to the ground.
Well, let me ask you though, because and we can get to the MVP stuff, but like you said, and Bukes, you've written about it on DK Nation. The expectation is he's going to win. He is certainly the favorite right now, -1,000. But you listen to him, that interview with ESPN back at the All-Star game certainly didn't sound like a guy that planned on sticking around, was very much looking at it like a business. There was no loyalty in that conversation anyway. Carabas being Carabas said, likes to tease the people and say Judge is going to be a Red Sox next year. But if you had to sit here and guess, where does he wind up? Will he re-sign because the Yankees will feel internally pressured to do so, or is he going to wind up somewhere else?
I think he should be a Yankee. That's where he started. That's where he should end up. And like LaMarcus said, they've been, trying to strategize this for a couple of years now because of this incoming contract. I think if there's a team that actually might seriously grab him and has the means to do it, I think the San Francisco Giants is a team that actually has it's not the Mets. No, stop it. It's not the Mets. You want to talk about New York going under fire. Him taking the subway to Citi Field, that would be a nuclear strike to New York if that happens.
Is there a move though? Like, I don't think he's going to the Mets for the record, but like, is there a more I've arrived move by Steve Cohen than just stealing Judge away from the Yankees?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, for drama purposes from the outside looking in, I love that. That would be fantastic. I would eat that up anywhere. Boston, I would love that. I would eat that up. But is it probably going to happen? No, but I would not put it past crazy, Uncle Steve to do something of that nature. Yeah. But I think the Giants are a legitimate team that could end up landing him there. I mean, that's a team that really desperately needs a reset. They have a lot of aging players on that team. Not that Judge is young by any means in terms of baseball. By the time opening pitch comes around next year, he's going to be approaching 31. So there is that. But I think they're a legitimate team that could end up swooping in and grabbing him.
When did Judge enter the league, by the way?
I would set the Yankees odds to re-sign Judge at like -500.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be so desperate that they will match any offer. And I do think that Judge likes it here. I think he wants to be the next captain of the New York Yankees. I know that he's been playing it cool in the media, but I think that that's kind of what you have to do when you're in the middle of a contract negotiation.
Yeah.
If I was negotiating an extension with DraftKings, I wouldn't be out saying like, oh, I love it here so much. Like I would be saying, well, I'm exploring my options. I got to do what's best for me and my family.
That's how you buy a car.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, pretty much. Not going to pay over sticker. Well, you might have to in 2022. All right. Well, let's look at that just while we're here and while we're talking about guys that we've been talking about. Judge, like I said, he's the favorite in the DK Sportsbook. Shohei Ohtani is +500 in the MVP race. And Jose Ramirez is plus 8,000 right there as well. Tim Anderson plus 10,000. So is Max Kepler and Taylor Ward and Jose Abreu for that. Let's go.
The entire field.
Yeah, I was going to say as my eyes started to go. Yeah, the whole thing. So is anybody going to catch Judge? Is there any chance Shohei is going to get there once again?
I mean, one of the most worthless conversations for the rest of the year is MVP for both leagues. Like it's Judge and Goldschmidt. I mean, barring an injury, that knocks them out for the rest of the season. Even if Judge and Goldschmidt both hit the 15-day IL at this point, or the 10-day IL, whatever it is at this point, it doesn't even matter anymore.
Yeah, both.
They've done enough, right? Like, I know Arenado's making some noise lately. Austin Riley was making some noise for a little while, but like, they've just separated themselves so much. Like, Goldschmidt has the legitimate shot at winning the Triple Crown in the National League. That's your MVP right there. Judge, no shot. Ohtani could throw like 2 no-hitters between now and in October. I still don't think it would be enough, truly, because when the MVP is given out, it kind of, I think we have this conception. It's like, who has the best stats, but it's like, who means the most to that team is really what an MVP is to me. And Judge has been everything the Yankees have needed all season long. Can you imagine the lack of offense, especially when that team is something without Judge? Like, I know he wasn't seeing a ton of pitches when Stanton was out, and look what happened right when Stanton came back. The team put up double digits in runs. The loss of Stanton was vastly overstated. That changed the entire complexion of that lineup, because now you have to pitch to Judge. And then when you have to pitch to Judge, he gets on or he hits a home run. Now you have to pitch to Stanton. It really was amazing. The even in one night, the difference in that lineup with Stanton in there, and then teams have to pitch to Judge. So this isn't even a conversation. It's Goldschmidt and Judge. There's no bets to be placed at this point, even on a long shot. But like I said, they would have to miss the rest of the season. They can even go on the IL for a few weeks. Wouldn't even matter.
You concur with all of that, LaMarca?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to make a case for anybody else at this point, right? Like, they have the best traditional stats. They have the best advanced stats. Judge is a full win above everybody else in terms of WAR this season. He's at 7.9 on Fangraphs. Number 2, Paul Goldschmidt, 6.8. And that's it, right? Like, it's those 2 guys. And I think this was a Miselman point. It might have been a Bukes point. And if it is, I apologize, Bukes. But what are the odds that Shohei Ohtani is still pitching in a few weeks, right?
Yeah.
Like, at some point, the Angels are going to shut him down, because why? Why risk it? It doesn't make sense to have him out there throwing pitches for a team that is this bad. Right. So I think that he's the only one that could even realistically challenge Judge. And if he's not going to pitch, I think it's impossible. So like you said, both of these guys are chasing history. Paul Goldschmidt going for the Triple Crown. Aaron Judge trying to get past 61 homers in a year, which some people still consider, the true home run record. So it should be those 2 guys, barring something, unfortunate happening to either.
Even if it was a dozen more. Let's live in the here and now then, fellas. And some of the action that is going on tonight, we can pull up, obviously, the DraftKings Sportsbook and look at some of the lines and everything that is available to the people. Some interesting potential playoff preview types of games that are on the docket as well, which is fun. We can get to some of those. But first and foremost, just in terms of narratives and stories and whatnot, the Phillies, who have been scorching hot under their new manager, Rob Thompson, since Joe Girardi was cast aside. They have been phenomenal. Bryce Harper is coming back tonight, which only adds to the intrigue as well. So, LaMarcus, starting off with you here, how much of a difference is that going to make? How intrigued are you by some of the futures odds for Philly, be it, division, league, World Series, whatever might jump out at you?
Philly's they're a good team. This is another thing that Matt Meiselman's been hopping on for weeks. I've kind of been team St. Louis Cardinals. He's kind of been team Phillies, and both teams ended up being really good in the end. So I think there's no real losers there. What's hurting Philly is that in all likelihood, they are going to finish 3rd in the National League East. And that means they're going to have a very tough road come the playoffs, right? They're going to have to play a wild card series and then potentially 2 of the Mets, Dodgers, and Braves. Like, that's a road and a half to go through. So I don't have a ton of appeal there. I would rather, if I was going to play a future, I would still go with the Cardinals. I still think, we've lost some value on them, but if you didn't get them back when they were like 40-1 or 50-1 to win the World Series, I still think you can get them now, probably in that 20-30 range, and that's acceptable to me.
Hughes, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just echo what LaMarcus said here. Like, there's no shot in the East. Like, there's absolutely zero shot there that they get that between the Mets and the Braves. Two teams only play each other 3 more times the rest of the season too. So it's going to have to be what they can do to the other teams in the interim. And the Mets have the easiest schedule the rest of the year. Strength of schedule, they have the easiest one in all of Major League Baseball.
Would you like to hear a fun little stat?
Let's hear it, baby.
The Mets are done playing the Phillies this year, which is the earliest that's like ever happened. But the Mets faced Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola 9 times this year.
Wow.
The Mets record in those games, 9-0.
Wow. That's not good if you're a Phillies fan. If you're taken down to, and Wheeler just went on the IL last night. Scheduled to pitch tonight, so he's gone for a little while too. But yeah, no real lean here in the National League. I wouldn't hate taking a shot with the Braves at plus 425 if you want to make that one there. They're a very, very strong team. And the other thing is too with the Braves, the amount of production they're getting from their rookies is like insane. Grissom and Harris, like Harris has been hitting 9th for the Braves for the majority of the time he's down here. See, he's hitting like over 300 in the 9-hole. Getting that type of production that low in the lineup and setting the table for the top of your lineup is like almost unprecedented. So I love that they keep them down. They keep him down there because it's such a different complexity to a lineup because those guys, notoriously in automatic outs with the pitchers. But now we have someone like Harris sitting down in the 9 spot with how productive he's been. Grissom's been showing some great power after the power hit is there too. So I just love their lineup. The bullpen is great. The rotation is great. It's going to take a little bit more to take down some of these other teams in the NL. So that's the only part. But I think out of all the teams that could do it, not aside from the 2 favorites, I think the Braves have to be viewed as one of those teams.
So I'd like to throw this out. I think that this is important to know. We haven't really talked about this a lot with the new playoff format. Whoever wins the NL East will arguably have the easiest road in the National League.
Yeah.
Because they're going to get the first round bye, and then they will play the winner of the number 3 seed versus the number 6 seed, which means the winner of the NL Central, likely looking like the Cardinals, and the final wild card team, which is looking like maybe the Phillies or the Padres. The team that finishes second in the NL East becomes the 4 seed, aka the number 1 wild card seed. They will have to play the number 5 seed in the first round, then the Dodgers, and then if they can beat the Dodgers, then they have to potentially play the Mets.
Oof.
Or the winner of the NL East, excuse me. So that's why I like targeting the team that you think is going to win the NL East and the Cardinals, who I think are going to win the NL Central, just because they will have the easier road. They're only going to have to play one of those mega stud teams.
Wow.
Something to think about going forward. Let's, in the interest of time, because we've got less than 10 minutes left here in the show, we can look at some of the lines tonight and some of the intriguing games as well. I think that, well, a couple of key games that we talked quite a bit about on the Sweat earlier today anyway, included, let's see, Braves, Cardinals, as well as, of course, Mariners and Guardians. Those 2 with some real playoff implications, albeit a decent amount of time left in the regular season. But what first and foremost, Bukes, is the game that intrigues you the most tonight?
Out of all the games, I do like that the Braves and Cardinals one. I think that's actually a solid one to take. The Braves on the run line at -1.5, getting that at plus 110. I have no faith in Jose Quintana. That was one of the guys that I thought was going to be a red flag for whoever ended up acquiring him from the Pirates. Is that where he was earlier this year? I think it was the Pirates. Yeah. The Braves just absolutely smashed left-handed pitching. So them going up against Spencer Strider, who's already shut down this Cardinals club once already. I like the value you're getting here at plus 110 on the run line at -1.5 to go against this Cardinals team. I know the Cardinals have been absolutely mashing, but Strider has been on a completely different level since being called up. It's got immense strikeout upside and just the matchup itself against the lefty and Quintana. So I like that spot for the Braves a lot at -1.5 at plus 110.
LaMarca?
Yeah, I think if you're saying which game is the most intriguing, it has to be this one. but I don't think it's the game with the most betting value. Like, I don't want to lay minus 165 against the Cardinals. They're just too good of a baseball team at this point for me to really consider that. I think the game, I've kind of just been on Baltimore, like anytime I can get them as an underdog, and we can do that again tonight, right? They are plus 165 against Lance McCullers Jr. They will have a significant pitching disadvantage in McCullers versus Bradish, but again, the Orioles have just been a absolute license to print money this season as underdogs. I'm going right back to the well. I don't understand why they continue to get so much disrespect.
Anything to add to that one there, Bukes, before we move on?
I would honestly, like, I'm not even joking. I would be afraid to bet against the Orioles at this point. It's getting a little out of hand how good they actually have been. Like, it was a fun story for a little while. Now I'm like, are they actually this good? Because now it's like,
does that make you a believer? Like, it's one thing when it goes from fun to maybe I should take them seriously. Are you now actually taking them seriously? Like,
I mean, we're
go to the playoffs and do something.
We're almost in September, and they are on the precipice of taking that potentially that third wild card spot. And I know that the Tampa Bay Rays currently have the top wild card spot. I'm still not convinced that team is going to make the playoffs. You can take them to miss the playoffs at plus 325. And they have the second hardest schedule remaining aside from the Arizona Diamondbacks. If you look at their schedule for the month of September, it is brutal. It is absolutely brutal. So I look at a situation like that, and I have to think maybe this is the team that misses out, and maybe that's how the Baltimore Orioles end up getting in. Because if you look at their lineup this month coming up in October, 6 against the Astros, 6 against the Yankees, 9 against the Blue Jays. They have a really, really tough schedule. They have 9 against the Red Sox, so maybe 9-0 right there. 3 against the Rangers and 2 against the Marlins. Like, it is literally, aside from those games, it is a slugfest. And I don't think Tampa has the team to combat that type of schedule. 38 games left, and more than half of them against the Astros, Yankees, and Blue Jays. I think they might end up missing.
Lamar, do you have any bold calls like that?
On the Rays missing the playoffs? No.
No. I mean, on another team that you think may fall short in the end here?
You could take the Brewers, too, at plus 110.
It's not even bold anymore. I gave out the White Sox at plus 140 to miss the playoffs a couple of weeks ago. They're now down to minus 205 to miss the playoffs. I feel pretty good that I like the Rays and the Blue Jays both to get in, and I think the National League is pretty much set at this point. The Brewers are not going to make the playoffs, in my opinion. So maybe that's the bet. Maybe take plus 110 on the Brewers. Outside of the fact that they just apparently hate the fact that the team traded away Josh Hader. Like, I just think that the Padres, the Phillies, and the Braves are all better than the Brewers. So
yeah.
In our last couple minutes here, guys, we haven't really gotten into any daily fantasy at all. So with a fairly robust slate tonight, you could, if there's a hitter you want to single out or a pitcher, whatever direction you want to go in the time that you want to take here. But just looking at some of the top options on the mound, I can tell you Shane Bieber got a lot of love on the show this morning, but Garrett Cole obviously is the highest projected scorer on this slate at right around 21, 22 points, but you got to pay for him certainly at 10,700. Freddie Peralta's in a good spot as well. There's some decent value pitching. So Lamarca, where would you like to go?
I mean, certainly Garrett Cole against like one of the worst offensive teams in the league, playing in essentially the Grand Canyon. Like, going from Yankee Stadium to Oakland Coliseum is just such a massive pitching upgrade for a guy like Garrett Cole, who does allow some fly balls from time to time. Like, I think Cole is going to dominate. I think the most interesting DFS matchup we have tonight is Glenn Otto versus the Detroit Tigers. The Tigers have been historically bad against right-handed pitchers, like just worst in the league in virtually every metric. But Glenn Otto is about as bad of a right-hander as you can find in Major League Baseball right now. So which way do you want to go, right? I've been calling this matchup the movable force versus the stoppable object, right? Like, which bad will ultimately win out? Will Otto just continue to mow down the Tigers, or will the Tigers maybe show some signs of life? I think whichever way you choose to answer that question, there's some value to be had. Because obviously, if you think Otto's good, he's 6,200. That's a really cheap price tag. If you think maybe the Tigers can get to him, their hitters are all ridiculously cheap, so there could be some value that way. I think that's kind of like an important situation that you need to ask yourself one way or the other, which side wins out.
Bukes?
Yeah, if you really want to go cheap on pitching, you take Glenn Otto and then you pair him with Justin Steele going against the Brewers. This is somehow the 6th time that he's facing the Brewers this season. I didn't even know that was possible. We're not even in September. 2.10 ERA against that team, 33 strikeouts through 25 2/3 inning. That Brewers team stinks against lefties. So incredibly bad against lefties. One of the worst WOBAs in all of baseball against lefties, hitting 214 as a club against lefties. They are just straight up bad against them. But Justin Steele, 7,600. He's been really solid for about a month and a half now. I don't know why he's still priced as low as he is. Some of these other, when you consider some of the other guys that are priced above him, especially like guys like Logan Gilbert in a horrible matchup against the Cleveland Guardians tonight. Talk about no strikeout upside in that one. But he's, almost $700 more expensive than Steele. So give me Justin Steele tonight, 7,600. You pair him with Glenn Otto. What does that give you? That gives you an average of 4,500 for the rest of your hitters. That's really solid to jam some guys in there.
Would you say that his salary is a steal?
Yes.
Oh, God. All right, guys, real quick. I saved this for the end because I don't know that you actually have put any thought into it yet, as we're still sitting a couple weeks out from football season. But there was there was one question, fantasy football in the chat. Do you think you're capable of handling that? Are you armed for fantasy football?
Rip it.
All right. The question was, I've got my draft tonight, and I'm not. Are there any top guys I should stay away from, or a sweet steal you can give me in the 13th or 14th round?
Well, Damian Pierce probably isn't going that late anymore. Draft him. I really like him. I got him in the 10th round of a super flex draft a couple of weeks ago.
Nice.
I'd have no problem taking him in like the 7th round of a startup single quarterback league. Isaiah Pacheco for the Chiefs is a very sexy, late round flyer you can target at running back. Same for George Pickens at wide receiver, for the Steelers. I would say those are some of the guys that are generating the most buzz right now.
Bukes, anyone to add to that, or the other half of the question of?
I would say if I'm staying away from someone, I'm probably staying away from CeeDee Lamb. I know that there's been plenty about him getting so much. Well, here's my thing though, especially with the recent injuries, like. Tell me he's not going to be getting double, triple coverage, especially in the first half of the season until they get some help, until they get at least Washington back or something like that. So, I mean, that's just my feelings on that there. Like, I feel like the hype is going to be diminished early on just because teams are going to easily be able to double cover him. And then what do the Cowboys have after that?
Yeah. That's just a taste, folks. There's a whole lot of fantasy football talk and DFS and best ball and whatever else coming your way in the weeks to come. In fact, even sooner tonight, Rainmakers. If you haven't gotten in on the DraftKings Rainmakers bandwagon, you can learn all about it tonight. There is going to be a pack break with our host, Chris Costa. I'm assuming that our founder, one of them, Matt Kalish, who Rainmakers, this is his baby, man. I'm assuming he will be part of that live stream tonight coming up at 7:15 on the DraftKings channels, be it YouTube, Twitch, I believe. Obviously on Twitter, you'll be able to find it. Likely Gary V, who has been, very closely tied into some of the stuff we've been doing here at DK and working closely with Kalish. He will be involved, I think, in tonight's stream as well as he was last week when he had his big.
Don't overpromise things you don't know.
Pull. Well, look, he had the Herbert pull, so I want him to carry forward and be on to brag about that. So should be fun. Make sure you check it out again, 7:15 on DK Rainmakers Twitter as well. If you don't already, give it a follow there. But LaMarca, Bukes, Kaufman, Eamon, Drew, a whole bunch of other people. My kids are in the stands. Good to see you. All right, we'll catch you later on. Enjoy the night.